If mud is thrown onto a diamond, does it lose its value? No. It simply needs to be cleaned, and it shines again. So then, why do you let people's opinions, your difficult times, or your failures make you believe that you're worth less? Today's story might just change the way you see yourself. My name is Arav, and welcome to our channel. In a quiet village nestled among the mountains, where the mornings came wrapped in mist and the evenings smelled of wood smoke, there lived an old jeweler. His shop was small, just a single wooden counter, a dim lamp, and shelves lined with stones of every shape and color. But people didn't come to him for the fine ones on display. They came because of what he could see that others couldn't. People said he didn't just recognize diamonds. He recognized people. Farmers, travelers, even children brought him strange stones they'd found, half expecting to be laughed at. He never laughed. He simply looked and looked closely before he ever spoke. He often said,
"The world judges value by what shines. I recognize true value, even when it doesn't."
One grey afternoon, the bell above the shop door rang, and a young man stepped inside. He couldn't have been more than 20. His clothes were worn thin at the elbows, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if he'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time, though his hands were empty except for an old piece of cloth. His face was tired. His eyes carried disappointment, the kind that settles in slowly, failure after failure, until it becomes the way a person simply looks at the world. He unfolded the cloth carefully, almost apologetically. Inside was a stone, dull and caked with dried mud, the kind of thing most people would kick aside on a roadside path without a second glance.
Young man says, "I found this beside the road. At first I thought it might be worth something, but now it just looks like a useless rock, just like me."
The old jeweler didn't answer right away. He looked at the young man for a long moment, not at the stone, but at him, and said nothing. Then, without a word, he filled a shallow bowl with clean water and set the stone inside it. He began to wash it, slowly, patiently, the way someone might wash something precious rather than something ordinary. With every drop of water, a little more mud slipped away. The young man watched, unimpressed at first, expecting nothing. Then the room changed. Light caught something beneath the grime, and a flicker, then a glow, then an unmistakable brilliance that filled the small shop with color. It wasn't an ordinary stone at all. It was a magnificent diamond.
Young man says, "I was about to throw it away."
Old jeweler says, "You never saw the diamond. You only saw the mud covering it. Remember, this mud never reduces the value of a diamond. It only hides its brilliance for a little while."
The young man lowered his head. For a long moment he said nothing at all. Then, quietly, his composure broke, and tears filled his eyes, not just for the stone, but for something much closer to home.
Young man says, "I wish my life were that simple. People laugh at me. They tell me I'll never succeed. I've tried again and again, and I've failed every single time. Now, I've started believing them. Maybe I really am worthless."
The old jeweler listened to every word without interrupting. Then, calmly, deliberately, he did something the young man did not expect. He picked the diamond back up and placed it back into the mud. The young man's eyes widened in disbelief.
Old jeweler says, "Now tell me, has its value changed?"
Young man says no.
Old jeweler says, "What if it stays buried in that mud for an entire year?"
Young man says it still won't lose its value.
Old jeweler says, "And what if everyone who walks past it calls it a worthless stone?"
Young man says it will still be a diamond.
Old jeweler says, "Then why do you believe that other people's opinions can decide your worth? People don't see you for who you truly are. They see you through the lens of who they are. The jealous search for flaws. The fearful doubt every dream. Those who have given up on themselves want everyone else to give up too." but their opinions are not your identity. If you accept every criticism as the truth, one day you'll lose yourself completely. But the moment you recognize your own value, the noise of the world will never be able to stop you again.
For the first time since he'd walked into that shop, the young man listened with his full attention, not just his ears, but something deeper. That day, he left without the diamond, but he carried something far more valuable out onto the street with him, a new belief about who he was. He made himself a quiet promise. He would stop answering people with words. He would let his actions speak instead. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. It wasn't easy. There were still nights he doubted himself. Mornings he wanted to quit. Moments the old fear crept back in. But whenever someone doubted him out loud, he remembered the old jeweler's words, and he repeated them to himself like a quiet promise.
Young man says mud doesn't change the value of a diamond.
He kept working, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. He built skills where he once had none. He rebuilt relationships he thought he'd lost. Slowly, almost without him noticing, his name began to travel first through his own street, then his town, and eventually through the whole city. People who had once dismissed him began telling stories about what he'd achieved. One day, now a grown man with quiet confidence in his step, he returned to the old jeweler's shop not to buy anything, but simply to say thank you. But the shop was closed. The windows were dark. The counter he remembered so clearly sat empty behind dusty glass. The neighbors told him gently that the old man had passed away just a few days earlier. Tears filled the young man's eyes, different tears this time, heavier with gratitude than grief. On the shop door, weathered but still legible, a small handwritten note remained, as if it had been waiting for him. If the world ever calls you worthless, remember, not everyone knows how to recognize a diamond. The young man looked up at the sky and smiled, because at last, after everything, the mud, the doubt, the years of quiet work, he knew his true worth. Not because someone had finally told him, but because he had proven it to himself.
Remember this, always your circumstances may change, people's opinion will change again and again with the seasons. What your true value never does. So know your value, protect it frankly, believe in it quietly, and let your action shine brighter than anyone's opinion ever could. If this story reminded you of your own worth today, stay a while, where another story awaiting for you.